This is a world where magic exists. 4 continents with various species of sorcerers. The age of magic has taken over the city of Rondel, where the largest number of magicians are currently concentrated. This is how this place survived the Age of Swords and developed the most advanced magic. Although Rondel is a highly developed magical civilization, the political system is still a feudal system with kings and nobles. This means that the poor have difficulty studying alongside the rich. Even with so many problems, Rondel remains the most admired province when it comes to magic, so it received the title of Rondel's Golden Age. Everything seemed perfect until one day before the turn of the year 1999 to the year 2000. A peculiar message from an archmage left everyone distressed. He told that he hid his riches and knowledge somewhere in this world. Power can be obtained by the first one he finds. The archmage who left his treasure behind was the pioneer who took Rondel to the golden age of the magical century. He was also the Archduke of the Bring-Up Empire, but known as the Sorcerer Lord Lucas since the archmage's message. All the magic apprentices went crazy to get his power, so an intense journey for the treasure began. Some rumors arose that the hideout that Lucas spoke of was in a dungeon in the arid land of dragons. The apprentices traveled all over the world looking for what was left by the Sorcerer Lord. Regardless of nationality or species, they all endeavored to find the fate of Archduke Lucas, but after several attempts no one found the place. All continents were investigated, not even a clue appeared. 20 years ago, a boy was about to leave the dungeon when he was congratulated on finding Archduke Lucas's destiny. A smile instantly opened on his face. The scene changes to the past, in the year 2007 at Lawrence Castle. The butlers wake up Prince Adrian. The little white-haired boy thanks him for his concern and says he is going to get another book. The maids are in love with the child's delicate way. This is our main character named Adrian Lawrence. He has just reincarnated in the body of Viscount Rayford Lawrence's second son. The protagonist was an army soldier in his past life and passed away in a car accident. When he opened his eyes, he was transported to Reinhardt's kingdom and took over this body. He stopped calling himself Kim and now everyone calls him Adrian Lawrence. He went from a middle-class family to a family that owns several properties. The protagonist didn't despair much when he reincarnated because his past life experiences became a great advantage. Adrian stood out a lot in childhood because he was the smartest, while children his age were playing without thinking too much. He already did several calculations, so he received recognition from the people around him and met his father's expectations. This caused frustration in his stepmother and half-brother. Even so, the protagonist continued to study and found out about Rondel's existence. Unfortunately, the knowledge of his past life did not help much. He had never used magic or anything like that. Even so, he made an effort to continue being recognized as a genius. But one day his life turned upside down. He was poisoned when he was 7 years old and was saved by the healers who arrived in time. The Viscount was worried about his son's health and tried to find out who did it. For the protagonist, the answer was obvious. Although his stepmother posed as someone with a good heart, she could not fool Adrian. Anna Lawrence was the Viscount's official wife and consequently wanted to get rid of the protagonist and his mother. Anna felt uncomfortable when Adrian, who came from a poor lineage, began to be recognized. After a few days, the protagonist recovered and tried to get evidence to incriminate his stepmother, but he didn't find it. Nothing, besides no one suspected the official wife, not even Viscount Rayford. Adrian decided to leave the path of genius aside to lose everyone's attention and ensure his safety. 10 years pass. On May 1st, 2019, the protagonist was already 20 years old. He walked normally through cities outside the kingdom. People were in shock when they saw Viscount Lawrence's second son walking around without worries. In addition, Adrian dressed in ordinary clothes. The attendants were excited to serve him. The protagonist bought all the Chronicle cards online. The saleswoman delivered the order and he thanked her for the service. After the protagonist leaves the store, the attendants talk about him. Adrian made a point of visiting convenience stores instead of sending subordinates. Everyone who worked in the city was delighted with this. The attendant told his colleague that Adrian came at least 2 to 3 times a month. He seems to like games a lot and always buys those cards. Even the protagonist is shocked to spend 5 million won on gambling. At that moment, he is taken out of his thoughts. The guard warns that he received a call about Cedric's visit to his house. The scene changes to a few minutes later. The protagonist's mother named Sylvia Lawrence welcomes her son. Adrian's half-brother complains that he is going around without an official vehicle. The protagonist curses Cedric mentally. The half-brother says that he should think about the family's reputation. The discussion goes on for a few minutes. Adrian decides not to contradict his brother because he wants to end the matter soon. So he warns that Cedric is right and apologizes. The brother doesn't miss the opportunity to call the protagonist an illegitimate commoner, but Adrian doesn't even care and asks what the guy came to his house to do. Cedric brags that their father is planning to make him take over a business. Adrian is not surprised. Rondel's noble families are involved in several companies. Probably Cedric will take over the Fars distribution, which is the source of money for the mining industry, one of the businesses run by the Lawrence family. The protagonist understands why Cedric came here. He congratulates his brother and asks him to leave his house. But before he shows the purchases he made today, Cedric laughs, realizing that he spent money on gambling. Thanks to this, his brother leaves. His mother worries about Adrian, but the protagonist warns that keeping this type of person away is the best choice. He has isolated himself since the poisoning incident. His image as a genius has been erased, and the protagonist has avoided contact with vassals. The Viscount did not worry about him, probably because Adrian is the son of a concubina. The protagonist was not sad about his father's attitude. Thanks to this, his life was never put at risk again. So Adrian lived 10 years annulling his presence. As soon as he graduated, he left the castle with his mother. There were some rumors saying that he was no longer a genius and now he was addicted to games. Most of these rumors were spread by the castle servants under the influence of the official wife. Anna always wanted Cedric to stand out and was happy when no one else commented on Adrian. Now the protagonist can say that he lives happier only with his mother. At that moment, he goes back to the room and puts on the virtual reality glasses. The employees said that he spent money on games to escape reality. But this was far from the truth. Adrian clicks on the game, and an interface says that Chronicle Online is being connected. The character has been synchronized with his real body. His virtual actions result in changes in real life. 10 years ago, the protagonist was studying at the academy when he first heard about Archduke Lucas. He researched about the Archmage and discovered a coat of arms of the Lucas family with an English word. It was strange because the protagonist was in another world that did not belong to Earth. This means that no one in that place should know languages of the human world. For a moment, Adrian thought Lucas was also a human sent from Earth to the world of magic, but decided to research before jumping to conclusions. It didn't take long for him to really realize that Archduke Lucas was from Earth. Before passing away, the Lord wrote that he wanted to walk on the beach of California with Mary once again. No one cared about those words because no resident of the magical world knew about the Earth. Consequently, he did not know some names mentioned by Lucas. But Adrian investigated thoroughly and was sure that it was not a coincidence. Rondel's Grand Archmage belonged to the human world like him. The evidence was clear that that man was a native of the Earth. Since then, Adrian used his knowledge of the land of his past life to look for the fate that Lucas left behind. In the end, he managed to find it through the online chronicle. The protagonist thought his life would improve, but he was wrong. The real suffering began after he had put his hands on fate. No one thought that fate had been hidden in an online game. Adrian was the only one to find it, but now he's going through trouble. The attacks suffered within the game causes pain in real life. Probably no one would believe it if he told it. Now the protagonist tries to finish off that damn goblin who still has 80 HP points. Fortunately, the blade passed through the enemy's head. The critical damage yielded Adrian's victory. He reached level 10 and could change jobs. Adrian was sent to another scenario after finishing the first mission of Fate. He feels that it took longer than expected because he needed to synchronize his virtual body with the real body. At that moment, a portal appears and the system asks if he wants to go to the floor of Archduke Lucas' magic tower. Adrian confirms and is teleported to a library. A chest appears in front of several bookshelves. The system notifies that he's won 5 billion coins and asks him to enter the account to receive the deposit. The protagonist is happy that he finally received a reward. The interface says that a circle was created in the virtual body. Adrian says that this is much better than money. The creation of the circle was completed. Thanks to this, the protagonist could feel the power of mana in real life. It is the first time he has this feeling. Adrian takes advantage of the fact that the first circle was created to learn a technique, but he is undecided with the amount of books in front of him. He finds Lucas impressive for thinking about something like this. Suddenly, Adrian feels a very bad headache. The system says that he learned the skill from that book. The protagonist realizes that it is enough to touch to learn any technique. The content of the books were easily acquired, but the process of engraving the principles in the head is uncomfortable and painful. The last book he absorbs is the circular concealment technique. The content is very good for those who are learning to deal with magic, but the protagonist suffered from the headache. He lies on the floor with his 3 books while saying that he just wants to live a quiet life with his mother, so he will go through any pain for it. The next day, at the training ground of the protagonist's mansion, the trusted knight named Vice says that the boy has more stamina than he thought. To be honest, it was surprising when Adrian said he wanted to train swordsmanship. The truth is that the protagonist thought that real-life training could help in the game. His stats made a good impact on reality. What makes Adrian happier is that he can use the game's skills in real life as well. Luckily, the protagonist realized in time and hid the knight's mana circle. Thanks to the hiding skill he learned in Lucas' magic tower, Vice notices that Adrian looks happier today and asks what happened. The boy replies that he got a good item in the game. The servants whisper that a pathetic knight matches a pathetic young master. Vice gets angry, and the protagonist says that everything is fine. Deep down, Adrian feels grateful that he got angry in his place, but from the beginning his plan was to be seen that way to ward off the presence of Cedric and Anna. Sometime later, the protagonist returns to the game. He confirmed that the stats reflected in real life, so he prepares to create something that will give him more money and skills in the future. The system opens the game's item store. Adrian had heard that the most important thing in this game is the money he has in his wallet. He couldn't use the shop before because he hadn't reached level 10, but now the boy made several purchases. He increased XP, bought the goddess's blessing and protection. The most important purchase came next. A supporter. The protagonist thought it would be efficient to buy a guard to help him destroy the monsters. If you choose a good support, maybe it's not money thrown away. Your hope is to get a highest class warrior to be your tank. But unfortunately, you don't have money to buy anyone from the upper class. All purchases are refused due to lack of coins. The protagonist is sad because no one shows up, even offering 30 million won. The system suggests a woman named Arshia as support. She specializes in defense and uses a protective shield called God's Shield. Adrian has never heard of this supporter before and wonders if he is a new character. Luckily, this support has a good level in status. The protagonist clicks on buy. The system warns that once registered as a supporter, the changes cannot be undone. Adrian confirms that he would like to register her. Arshia appears in front of him without an expression on his face. The protagonist chooses the next destination. A few minutes later, we can see Arshia dealing with the monsters. While Adrian uses the magic missile skill, the system notifies that the protagonist has reached level 20. He feels that he is evolving faster with the help of Arshia. Although part of the experience is sent to her, it does not make much difference in his evolution. The protagonist thinks if he should take advantage of the time he has now to practice magic. He decides that he can do it in real life. So Adrian leaves the game and says that he will rest for training later. At that moment, a light appears in his room. He looks scared, realizing that Arshia followed him, then screams, asking what the hell she is doing here. The girl says she is her support. Adrian says he knows this. He doesn't understand why she didn't stay in the game. Arshia realizes that he is worried about how she maintains her presence in reality. The protagonist also notes that she understands the difference between real life and game. Arshia explains that she is like a homunculus, but you can also call her android. Creator Lucas predetermined her appearance and combat characteristics. The protagonist understands that she is one of the legacies left by the Sorcerer Lord. He says he would have chosen a more discreet support if he knew he would have to bring it to reality. Anyway, he has nothing to do. Adrian questions if she continues with the skills in the real world. Arshia replies that yes. At the moment, her maximum stats are comparable to those of a Grandmaster. The protagonist is surprised because a Grandmaster belongs to the 8th circle. The highest rank is the 9th circle. Arshia can be compared with the strongest continents, up to the kingdom of Reinhardt. The highest mage is in the 7th class, and in the world there are only 8 mages in the 8th class. The protagonist wonders how Lucas created a monster like this. It's good to have someone like that obeying his orders. The problem is that he can't imagine a place that can hide her. He asks where she was before coming here and if she can come back to the game later. Arshia replies that she stayed in a sacred city in the maintenance warehouse, then it was sent here by the server. If you want to go back to the maintenance storage, you will have to go alone. Adrian asks if she has stealth or magical concealment. The girl replies that she can hide mana. He asks her to test it. Arshia closes her eyes and her shield disappears along with the armor of her body. The protagonist is happy, because then the girl will not be discovered as a mage by the knights. Now, Arshia looks like an ordinary girl and Adrian says he will make good use of her bad reputation. In the next day, the rumors start to spread. People comment that the Viscount's second son is taking a woman home. The protagonist made a point of taking Arshia shopping. They were seen together everywhere possible. Arshia was called any woman for being involved with the protagonist. Sylvia thought differently and was happy that her son found a bride. Later that day, the protagonist entered the game with his support. He was confused about what would happen to the girl's body when they left reality. Arshia told him that her body would be in reality as if it was resting. But she left a protection monitoring function activated. This means that she will protect him if something in real life happens. At that moment, the conversation of the two is interrupted by a loud roaring noise. The orc warrior has arrived to destroy them. This is the boss of Stage 2 of the Destiny mission. The system warns that the use of items that facilitate hunting is prohibited, such as bombs and scrolls. Adrian says that the Sorcerer Lord really wants to create a strong disciple. He turns to Arshia. At that moment, the orc shouts that they are damn humans and lowers his staff with force. The staff hits the steel shield and he is pushed back. The monster looks without understanding how Arshia managed to stop his attack. In the next moment, the protagonist finds the opening to shoot his magic missile. The orc is hit in the eye. The system notifies a critical hit. Adrian is happy because the power of his magic missiles has surpassed those of a primary circle. While the boy celebrates the advance, the monster gets up and performs another attack. The protagonist, who was distracted, is saved by Arshia's shield. Despite the critical hit, the orc continues with many life points. One blow is enough for Adrian to be eliminated, so he mentally thanks him for having a support equal to Arshia. There are many life points to take from that ogre, and the protagonist starts using the ability to dig. A hole appears in the ground and the enemy falls. Adrian asks Arshia for help to prevent the opponent from getting up while he continues the attack. After a few attacks, the orc appears to have been run over, but still has 50 health. Adrian fires another magic missile. The system notifies that the opponent has been defeated, and the third floor of the magic tower has been opened. Meanwhile, in Viscount Lawrence's office, Anna asks what her husband is thinking. Rayford is silent. Then the woman asks if he is sad because Adrian took a commoner to the mansion. The Viscount pushes her away and delivers a letter. The official wife realizes that it is a special forces order, where she calls people to fight. Anna asks if her husband is really thinking of sending Cedric to battle. She tries to convince him to send Adrian, justifying that he spends every day at the mansion just focusing on games. Rayford asks if she now thinks he is necessary. Anna replies that Adrian spent all this time taking advantage of the rights of the nobility. The Viscount does not seem to agree initially, but follows the current wife's decision and decides to send Adrian in this battle, but makes it clear that when the boy returns, he will become completely independent, so Anna should not interfere in his life ever again. The next day, the protagonist finishes training with Vice. The knight says that his physical strength has improved a lot thanks to his consistent training in the last few days. Adrian thanks him for the compliment, even though he knows that his improvement is because of the skills of the game Chronicle. When he completed the second stage, he received a very satisfactory, in addition to receiving a lot of money and forming the second circle. He also gained a subspace, so the protagonist has his own inventory to hide the necessary items. He tells himself that he is very lucky to be able to improve his stats in the game and bring it to reality. Depending on his effort, he can even become a mage, while having physical abilities comparable to those of a knight. At best, if the royal fully absorbs the stats received from fate, there is a chance to become a scarier monster than the Archmage Lucas. At that moment, Adrian's thoughts are interrupted by a call. He is informed that His Highness has summoned him in the castle. A few days later, a meeting takes place at Lawrence's castle. Cedric is against the protagonist, being the family's representative on the battlefield. Viscount Rayford replies that Cedric is the only heir of this family and cannot be in danger. Sylvia questions if Adrian is not precious. The Viscount replies that there is a difference between the protagonist and Cedric when it comes to the heir of the family. Adrian begins to get annoyed with his father's words, but deep down he understands that this is the best solution for his life. He is sure that he will not have problems on the battlefield because he is from a noble family. In addition, he can get rid of Anna for good. So Adrian says loudly that he will participate in the battle representing the family. Cedric says he won't want to contradict his father's order, but promises to finish off the protagonist if he defames his family's name. Adrian finds this very funny because until the moment Cedric didn't understand that he's going to fight in his place so the guy doesn't get hurt. Anyway, the protagonist has no desire to continue here and says goodbye, but the father asks to have a private conversation. Then they walk in the free area of the castle. The Viscount is direct and says that if everything goes well during the battle, Sylvia and Adrian will be transferred to the king's land. This is the reward he prepared for the protagonist to fight in Cedric's place. Both were also away from Anna's eyes and her interferences. The protagonist thinks the reward is too good and wonders if his stepmother really agreed to it. He doesn't trust his father's words. The Viscount notices his hesitation and says he understands that son doesn't trust him. Adrian replies that he basically has to come back alive to receive something like this. The father agrees and hands some artifacts into his hand. Are two rings. The first is a class 5 shield and the second is a large class 7 shield. He decided to give this to the protagonist because on the battlefield it is not allowed to use teleportation. Adrian realizes with surprise that they are really good items. The Viscount advises to use them when in danger. Suddenly, a sinister aura catches the protagonist's attention, and he notices Anna and Cedric. Certainly they wouldn't let him talk alone with his father. The Viscount knows the protagonist's concern, and says that he doesn't need to worry about Sylvia. Obviously, these words don't serve as any support for Adrian. After all, he was poisoned at the age of 7, and the attitude his father had was disappointing, but at this point he has no one to trust but his father. So Adrian tells the Viscount that he is trusting his words. Later that day, the Viscount doesn't feel very well. He can't forget the conversation he had with his son earlier. For some reason, the man has the feeling that the protagonist has hidden his true personality all along, since the incident with the poison. Meanwhile, at Adrian's mansion, Sylvia begins to cry, very worried about her son. He tries to make sure that everything will be okay and will come back from the battle alive, but his mother is very afraid that the worst will happen. The protagonist replies that it is good that something happens because then these damned wands accumulate more crimes, and it is easier to get rid of them. Sylvia asks him to speak quietly so no one hears. The protagonist replies that Urshi is taking care of the door. He says that everything will be fine and it's just a matter of time to get rid of that person's annoying diaries. 2 days pass and the day of Lawrence's army deployment arrives. The employee Harmon is already in trouble. He asks if the young man knows he is going to battle. The man says that he cannot take his girlfriend to the battlefield. Even so, Adrian takes Sarsha to the levitation train. Inside there is a meeting, and the protagonist makes it clear that he is not going to the battlefield without the girl. It turns out that Arsha agreed to give her life for him if necessary. In addition, Adrian spent 200 million in the game for any unforeseen event that could occur on the battlefield. Thanks to this, he rose to the 3rd level of the encounter with luck and received some rewards. A bottle of omnipotent healing and 3 bottles of elixirs. Everything is stored in your inventory in case it needs to be used. At that moment, the protagonist realizes that he doesn't have much to talk about at the meeting and says he's leaving. Harmon looks scared. Adrian warns that he's going to the room to play his game. A man with red hair says that before he didn't believe the rumors were true. The protagonist recognizes that guy as Dalton. He belongs to the Vanguard. One of the highest positions in a battle, they basically decide the military strength of a nation. Dalton calls the protagonist's attention, saying that he can be recognized as incompetent. After all, he brought a girl to a battle and is still saying that he will play. He even understands to bring this girl because she is very beautiful. At that moment, another person interferes in the conversation and tells him to be careful with his words. Dalton is silent immediately. That man is the deputy leader of the Vanguard called as Billiam. The protagonist watches the deputy leader apologize for his subordinate, but deep down he feels that everyone in that place agrees with Dalton's words. Then he just turns his back and says they can text him if you need him. A little later, Arsha and Adrian face a much bigger monster this time. The protagonist uses an item called Salamander Tears. It is an item made with expensive materials and deals 3,000 damage. Adrian uses Salamander Tears to defeat that enemy, and the system notifies him of his victory. He has also reached level 80 and will be sent to the secret room by the god Ariel. Arsha and Adrian are teleported to the 4th level quest. The demon appears with 32,000 hit points. The protagonist says that they need to defeat this boss before reaching the western headquarters. The Lich demon in front of him is scary. Despite this, the protagonist hopes that this boss will be slow. Suddenly, the Lich shouts ice spears and Adrian is surprised. At that point, Arsha is far away to protect him. The protagonist understands this and realizes that the only solution is to dodge. He tries and starts screaming in pain. The Lich demon bursts into laughter, saying that he heard the sound of bones breaking. Adrian couldn't dodge and was hit in the shoulder. The pain is intense and he gets annoyed by the demon's laugh because it looks familiar. An image of Cedric flashes in his mind and the protagonist stands up in anger. The demon attacks with fire magic. Arsha takes the lead and holds the impact with the shield, while Adrian runs after her holding a sacred artifact. He asks the girl not to let the Lich attack again and she agrees. The protagonist used that artifact with sacred attributes to burn the demon. Lich screams in pain without understanding how he was hurt with a simple wand. He tries to create a wall of fire to get rid of the attack, but Adrian pierces the protective barrier and shouts that he will finish off the damn monster that looks like Cedric. Lich is hit in the face with the sacred artifact. The system notifies the host's victory and the protagonist falls to the ground breathless. Arsha runs to him and uses a healing potion from the inventory. Adrian thanks internally for the support's help, but was surprised when he realized that she could open his inventory. The system quickly sends them to the 5th floor of the tower. Adrian, already recovered, runs to the treasure. The reward this time is 500 billion coins and round glasses. The protagonist is surprised by the second item and says that it must not be in ordinary glasses. He puts it on his face and the system explains that the item is clairvoyance and improved vision. He analyzes statistics and people's true emotions during a conversation. The item is better than Adrian expected. After completion, his 4th circle was created. The next day, the floating train arrived at the headquarters west. Adrian is recognized by some members of the special force. They thought that Cedric would be the representative of the Lawrence family. Someone says that Adrian was a genius in childhood until he took poison. The protagonist interrupts the conversation and confirms that he was the one who took poison. The men try to disguise it and welcome. Soon after, the first introduces himself as Viscount Evans, the head of the local team of this headquarters. The second man introduces himself as Viscount Miller, assistant to Chief Evans. The protagonist says that it is a pleasure to meet them. Evans checks the number of people who will be in the battle. Adrian says that it is 5 vanguards, 50 knights and 1,000 soldiers. Evans replies that this battle will end only with the vanguards. The protagonist forces a smile, realizing the man's arrogance, but in the end agrees with Evans. After all, only great sorcerers of the 7th circle or above can control the vanguard. As far as he remembers, it was Archduke Lucas who created the vanguard system. Miller warns that Lawrence's army was organized as the 2nd Independent Brigade, under the command of the 3rd Division. Then he must make sure to obey the commander of the division named Otis. The protagonist agrees. Commander Otis is the great lord of the West. He expects the man to be more tranquil than these hostile viscounts. A week later, we see that the protagonist did well and shouted that Otis was the best. It turns out that the commander simply took a vacation from the soldiers. Adrian was informed that Otis was absent and only returns at the beginning of the battle. The protagonist found the man very irresponsible, but in a way he would have more time to improve his skills in the Chronicle. At that moment, Arshia says that someone entered his room and he immediately closes the game. Arshia blocked Dalton's way, holding his arm. The man was surprised by her strength. Adrian puts on his glasses and checks the invader's emotions. He is startled when he notices the angry guy and asks what the man came here to do. Dalton replies that he was only worried about his health because he spent a lot of time in the room, but this girl is getting in his way. Adrian hits Dalton's knee and he staggers forward. The protagonist says that he made it clear that he was to text him if something happened. Arshia is there to protect him, so you better make up a good excuse for entering the room without permission. Adrian accuses him of trying to murder him. Dalton is offended and says he is a vanguard. He would never do something like that. The argument draws the attention of other knights. The protagonist asks Arshia to explain what happened here. She says that Dalton entered the room and wanted to take him. The man says it's a lie, and she is trying to blame him for something that didn't happen. He tries to convince the protagonist to believe him and says that this woman is lying. Adrian notices the knights that Dalton brought with him and reaches out to get the dagger that is with Arshia. Then he furiously tells Dalton that by the knights it is possible to see that he organized a mutiny, so he makes a point of giving the punishment to the vanguard. The protagonist made that decision because he was not willing to be humiliated. Now that he was away from Anna's eyes, it was easier to act. At that moment, Adrian holds the dagger and tells the man to take a step forward. The news about the disagreement between Adrian and Dalton reaches the deputy leader Billiam. He is informed that the commander of the brigade has given the order to assassinate Dalton. Billiam is against it because they are about to enter the battlefield. Losing a knight will be missed. At that moment, the deputy leader invades the protagonist's room and comes across a dagger flying towards him. Adrian says that the man arrived just in time to save his subordinate. The deputy leader looks at Dalton on the ground and asks what happened here. The protagonist says he didn't think chasing a woman was part of the Knights' organization. Billiam turns to the Knights and yells, asking what they did. Men admit they embarrassed the girl and apologize, while Dalton continues on the ground spitting red liquid. Billiam gives the order to confiscate the weapons that the vanguard has. In addition, the 3 knights who were accomplices will be sent to prison as well. Billiam bends over to apologize, but Adrian just warns him to clean up the mess that was left in his room while he waits outside. The deputy leader tells himself that the boy finally dropped the mask. He was eager to meet the real Adrian. A while later, Arshia and Adrian return to Chronicle. They fought the boss from the 5th floor. Arshia is on the defense while the protagonist thinks about what attack he will use. The fallen knight is currently at 12,800 health points. He forces an attack with the cursed sword. Adrian holds the blessed artifact and hides behind Arshia. The fallen knight followed him with his eyes and was distracted. Arshia took advantage of the moment to hit him in the face with a shield. At that moment, Adrian used his blessed artifact, ending the boss's life. The system notifies the host's victory, and he is teleported to the treasure room. The protagonist was shocked by how much money fell into his account. Suddenly, his attention is directed to the rewards that have arrived. Several interfaces appear. The protagonist takes 2 pieces of equipment and leaves the rest to Arshia. Fortunately, all the items are good. Arshia says that he has an intruder. Adrian leaves the game and hears someone apologizing for entering his room. The knight calls the protagonist's commander and explains that he felt a powerful aura suddenly, then came to check if everything was okay. Adrian replies that he doesn't have to worry because it was his artifacts. The knight then leaves the room. The protagonist takes the sword he won when completing the 5th floor and understands why he caught the knight's attention. It is a sword that a vanguard would certainly use. The system warns that the Sword of Istra was made by Archduke Lucas himself and has a machine that can store aura inside. This allows anyone to use force. The guarded aura lasts for 15 seconds when it is released. Adrian reminds that Vanguard's force equipment is to amplify the knight's aura. The aura is different from mana because it cannot be created artificially. He assumes that a mage's equipment has the same function. The system sends the 2 aura equipment he chose to use. Adrian is surprised by the beauty of the items. This explains why everyone wants the fate of Archduke Lucas. 2 weeks pass. Adrian was appointed representative of the Lawrence family and led the army on the front line against the Croatan Empire. The tense atmosphere when he arrived seemed to be gone. Even so, the servants are worried about the possible attack of the enemy clan. It can happen at any moment. All they do is wait for the other side to do something. In the midst of all this, the protagonist was surprised by the way the deputy leader treated him. Billiam seemed friendly and cautious. Adrian was more relaxed about it. He also checked Arshia's status and saw that she was happy. The protagonist was in doubt if she could be like this because they came for a walk. He even compares her to Happy Dog. It's strange because he didn't know that a homunculus had emotion. For some reason, the girl is starting to show personality. Adrian doesn't know anything about her, but is happy to feel her emotions. At that moment, Arshia's status changes to very happy, but she doesn't show any emotion. The protagonist laughs and says that they are going for a walk other times. Suddenly, a soldier blocks their way. Adrian asks if he has any problems. The guy invites him to drink something. The protagonist soon checks his emotions and realizes that the soldier is not a bad person, he is just embarrassed. The other soldiers laugh at Lopez's attitude. Adrian understands that the poor guy was sent by his friends to do that, so he decides to leave. But before he asks why Lopez chose to be a knight, the guy apologizes for the invitation and says he doesn't want to go to jail. Adrian checks the soldier's stats and is impressed when he realizes that he has more than 2 high-ranking talents. He had never come across someone like that. Only homunculus like Arshia could display these stats. The protagonist comes to the conclusion that Lopez is a very rare mage. He doesn't understand why the guy is being ridiculed by his friends. Anyway, it's not his problem. So the protagonist just advises him to leave the position of knight and focus on being a mage. Lopez looks surprised while Adrian catches the attention of the other guards. A few hours later, the protagonist returned to the room and remembered the previous situation. He didn't want to get into trouble, but it doesn't get out of his head that Lopez is a unique person. If he used magic equipment in the vanguard, he would be the most incredible magical swordsman. The protagonist considers training him and putting him under his command. The problem is Commander Otis. Lopez is a different county knight. To bring him to his side, he has to convince the commander first. The protagonist thinks if he could bribe Otis, he understands that he needs to build his own influence now that he is out of Anna's field of vision, and that is why he is willing to hire Lopez. Later that day, Lopez tells himself that he imagined that Adrian was another one of those hostile nobles, but he advised him to become a mage. Lopez felt that the young master was saying that to help him. He imagined that the protagonist was different because of the rumors, but he had a good surprise. At that moment, Lopez arrives in Otis' room and asks if the commander wants to talk to him. The knight is shocked when he notices the protagonist in the room. Otis goes straight to the point and says that Lopez must meet Commander Lawrence. From today, Adrian will be his new lord. The protagonist learned some things in his past life. One day, China lost to Korea in a football game, and a Chinese fan asked why China couldn't get 11 good players with a population of 1.4 billion. A user replied that the Chinese Messi or the Chinese Ronaldo were working on a farm somewhere. The protagonist remembered that interaction between fans when he saw Lopez. It doesn't matter if you have talent or effort. Nothing will do if your potential is not exposed to the world. Sometimes people just don't realize that they are on the wrong path, like Lopez, who dedicated his life as a knight instead of magic. There are several servants who have annulled their own talent to follow another path that they thought was the only one, so they totally hid their talents. Now the protagonist was determined to recruit all the talented young people he could find. He summoned a maid responsible for washing the soldiers' uniforms. Her name is Linda Noah, and she said that the magic test was negative. The protagonist replied that the test equipment must have had problems. Noah's stats were extremely high. He was sure that the maid would become a high-ranking mage. The protagonist spent millions to summon all the talents he found at the headquarters. Anderson was an ordinary worker who was invited by Adrian. His physique was one of the best for hand-to-hand combat. The protagonist also realizes that Anderson for some reason trusts him a lot, so he decides to take him right away to the test, but first asks them to change clothes. The servants were embarrassed because they were going to buy clothes in a noble store. Adrian notices their hesitation. A new summon arrives at the store. His name is Eric Jones, and he also has good statistics. One of his skills is negotiating politics. Adrian is happy for his choices. He warns out loud that recruits can choose what they feel comfortable without worrying about prices. The soldiers obey. For now, Adrian's goal is to train them outside the base, so everyone will dress correctly to suit the environment. A few hours later, Adrian takes the 5 guests to a luxury residence where they will be staying. They are all left to open-mouthed with the luxury of the place. The protagonist gave some watches so that they could receive his messages. He said that there was nothing to worry about because the day-to-day actions will be done by other people. So it is important to focus only on studies. The salary has already been sent to each one's account. The monthly salary is 20 million. The terms of the contract are all the same regardless of the status. Everyone will receive equally. The summoned ones thank you. The protagonist makes it clear that he will increase the salary if his intuition is right. Before leaving, Adrian warns not to disappoint his expectations, as he hates to scold. The summoned say they will not disappoint the commander. Adrian has created a residence that will soon be full of people recruited by himself. The boy is happy with his choices. This is the investment he made for the future. After the recruits were left at the residence, the protagonist knew that he needed to take care of their safety. After all, recruiting seemingly normal people would draw a lot of attention. He was right because at that moment someone followed them. Arsha was quick and stopped the bandit. She was prepared for these spies because a few days ago the protagonist commented that this could happen, mainly because Cedric called him and said that Adrian should hang out with ordinary people like him. Probably the spies were sent by Cedric to report his every move. Arsha holds the bad guy by the collar while he asks the protagonist for help, but Adrian says that his brother really doesn't know when to give up, so he will start fighting back. The protagonist tells Arsha to leave the spy on the ground and uses the dagger to threaten the enemy, but the spy was too focused on the frightening aura that Arsha was exerting on him, the bandit couldn't even move. A few minutes later, Adrian holds the dagger close to the man's face and begins the interrogation. He is almost sure that the spy followed him using Cedric's teleportation. The guy decides to tell some lies to make Adrian afraid, but the protagonist calls him by the name of Bertod and says that he already knows about his whole plan. The bandit was just listening to Cedric's orders and not opposing him. Adrian tries to convince him that he understands that he was forced to spy. Bertod realizes that the protagonist will try to use him against Cedric and says that he cannot do that. Adrian approaches the dagger and says that he must enjoy living, then questions whether he will accept the job or not. Bertod's forehead is cut by the blade. The protagonist warns that all the spy will have to do is deliver false reports to Cedric. In exchange, the other spy will be arrested in his place. Bertod quickly accepts the proposal. Night comes and he reports to Cedric, who is completely beside himself when he hears that the spy Meltz has been arrested. Bertod tells that his companion tried to enter Adrian's room and was caught. Cedric broke his father's orders by sending spies to watch his younger brother. He feels he shouldn't have done that. Anyway, decides to keep Bertod informed about Adrian's situation. The spy agrees and turns off the communication clock. The protagonist is happy with the advancement. He recruited 20 more people to the residence and left Eric and Elysia in charge of the studies. For now, everything is going well. A few days after Adrian reaches level 159, he was about to celebrate when Arsha said that he needed to leave urgently. Adrian leaves the room and Viscount Miller warns that they are under attack from ships of the enemy empire. The battle is about to begin. Adrian bids farewell to the days of calm. Everyone goes to the meeting room to discuss what the next step will be. Commander Otis warns that the troops will be placed on the levitation train so that they can be dispatched at any time. From that moment on, the spatial coordinates will go to the front line on the border with the Kryzan Empire. He adds that no one should think of teleporting. If this happens, there is no way to get out alive. The protagonist thinks that if the commander does not. If it were here, it could be worse. So it's good that the Krosans attack today. Otis ends the meeting by saying that communication will be cut. Only accredited colonels are free to do this. The others will use radio to facilitate communication. The protagonist understands that this warning is especially for him. Finally, the commander asks everyone to be on alert because the battle has begun. Adrian goes back to the room and eliminates the boss from the 6th floor. He simply ignored the warnings not to use appliances. Now his new reward has arrived. Adrian adds the Elysia account to transfer the 10 trillion coins he earned. The second reward he received was a sub-support called Black Eagle. The protagonist did not imagine that there was something like this in this world. He always thought that this type of support was usually a combat archer. Adrian goes back to reality and doesn't find the eagle. He leaves the base and looks for the animal outside. At first, the protagonist imagined that the great black eagle would appear exactly like Arsha that time, but it would be worse if that happened. At that moment, the girl screams for the protagonist and points to the sky. The knights are in shock looking at the huge eagle and ask the commander to dodge. The great black eagle lands gracefully on the ground facing its owner. The soldiers take the weapons to fix the animal, but Adrian shakes his hand saying that he doesn't need it. He checks the stats of his sub-support and realizes that she only has one skill, which is to share the vision with the master. The protagonist understands that to increase the eagle's skills, it will be necessary to complete missions, just like he did with Arsha. It won't be a big problem. In addition, the ability of the sub-support seems to be excellent and will help a lot during the battle. While the protagonist caresses the animal, the knights are in an attack position. Adrian realizes that he ended up drawing too much attention. The eagle connects with the master and displays his gentle emotions, leaving the knights incredulous. They were sure that the sub-support would go around attacking everyone. The truth is that even the protagonist expected to be attacked. A few hours later, some information of the battle arrives. The clash is expanded to the entire western border. Thanks to this, the brigade that Adrian was commander made its debut and the communication network cut the internet, so he could not enter the game. The protagonist was analyzing the information of the battle when he received the news that the army of the Kryzan Empire arrived. Adrian orders his subordinate to call the deputy leader Billiam in the vanguard. Harmon is shocked by the young master's calm and walks away. At that moment, the protagonist has a familiar feeling that they will be attacked by the enemy's vanguard, so he shouts for the 2nd Battalion to activate the energy shield. His request is granted. A bang hits the barrier and their ship swings. The protagonist didn't think the attack would be so strong because he was at a considerably distance. It is certain that the Kryzan Empire will win this fight if there is no one here with the 7th circle. The knight soon warns that the energy shield has been broken. Adrian realizes that a single attack destroyed their defense. At least there is the 8th circle Arsha in that place. The protagonist is praised by the Viscounts. They recognize that Adrian saved them when he ordered the shield to be raised. Things seem to get worse outside. The protagonist analyzes how the fight is going through projections. The enemy's attack does not stand out. The real problem is the size of their fortress. The Croatian Empire has 2 fortresses in the sky, but they are significantly smaller than theirs. It was probably produced for invasion. Harmon warns that it is the first time the Croatian Empire uses these fortresses in the sky. Apparently, the Empire has vanguards on the ground and fortified fortresses in the sky. It will be difficult to deal with this. At that moment, a projection catches your attention. Suddenly, one of the enemy's fortresses detaches and collapses. The base of the protagonist shoots at the piece. They celebrate that the fortress of the Croatian Empire is weak. Adrian looks at the statistics of the piece that fell, and the system warns that it was thanks to the overload of magic power. It is not something good as the knights thought. The protagonist shouts to warn the Sky Fortress that this is an attack by the Croatian Empire. The adversary is sacrificing his own men to hit them in an attack. Meanwhile, the piece of the Croatian Empire fortress descends at full speed with fire on the way. The Sky Fortress receives Adrian's alert and goes into despair. First, they attempt an emergency evacuation and fire aerial bullets to divert the target. Some soldiers also use firearms. Everything is valid to save their own lives, but the protagonist knows that this will not help. He sees that he needs to act and uses the artifact that his father gave him. The large shield surrounds the fortress. The 7th class artifact protects them from the opponent's sneak attack. Adrian sees if the fortress in the sky is safe. They retreated in time and are also unharmed. The protagonist demands that the guards confirm the vanguard situation and take care of the wounded soldiers. Later, the situation calms down, and the protagonist meets with Otis. The commander praises him for today's work. Thanks to him, the Sky Fortress was not hit. The Croatian Empire made the same attack against 3 other kingdoms. They were the only ones to notice and protected the fortress. Otis adds that he gave Adrian credits and told the local commander that it was all thanks to him. The protagonist thanks him. The commander then changes the subject and says that he heard some rumors about the boy. It seems that he tamed a giant beast. It's amazing because the knights who reported the situation said that he seemed to communicate with the eagle. The protagonist replies that it's not quite like that, but he decided to take care of it because it seems friendly. Otis says that he is sure that they had a mental communication. A bird expert joins the conversation and says that this black eagle is probably a species called Altair from the holy city Everhill. It is a rare species that is born with a high level of mana and is capable of flying for 5,000 km at once. Adrian pretends that he does not know this information. The expert adds that if these animals are tamed, they have never abandoned their master and are capable of sacrificing themselves for his safety. The protagonist only has Archduke Lucas to thank for the wonder of sub-support. That Lord Mage also thought of everything when he created virtual supports that are found in reality as well. It would be very difficult for the protagonist to hide something that no one had ever seen. Adrian already misses his game and asks the commander if he can use the internet again now that the enemy has retreated. Otis replies yes. 2 weeks later, Billiam leads the vanguard under the orders of the protagonist. He asks them not to trust the radar, only the instructions of the young master. The vanguard replies that she understands. At that moment, they are surrounded. Billiam did not imagine that the enemies would emerge from the ground. They were on alert thanks to the protagonist's instruction. The vanguard attacks the enemies and a confrontation begins. Billiam thought the best alternative was to wait for reinforcements, but Adrian ordered him to attack, so the leader of the vanguard shoots. A cloud of thick smoke covers them. When it dissipates, the deputy leader asks if everything is okay. At that moment, 10 soldiers of the vanguard appear under the command of Otis. The deputy leader is surprised by the speed of the reinforcements. He concludes that the protagonist already knew that this was going to happen and prepared the reinforcement in advance. Adrian asks Billiam why he is not attacking. The next target are from the back to the mountains. The deputy leader is impressed by the softness in that child's voice. The protagonist says that the goal is to defeat at least 5 units. A little later in the meeting room, the leaders talk about the 5 enemy vanguards that were eliminated. Otis says that it was all thanks to Adrian. He not only predicted the surprise attack, but also created an opportunity to counteract. Other units are suffering from it. At first, Commander Otis thought this genius was a coincidence at first, but with the way things unfolded, he is sure that Adrian is really a genius to be recognized. Maybe that poison didn't turn him into an idiot, as the rumors say. Otis has an idea and says that it would be good to bring Michelle to meet Adrian. The men are incredulous with the proposal and says that the boy already seems to have a girlfriend. He even took her to the battlefield. Otis replies that Adrian can turn Michelle into his lover. The Viscount reminds him that the young master is addicted to games, but the commander doesn't seem to find this a problem. He really wanted the protagonist to be his son-in-law. The Viscount says that everyone in that room would lose their minds if Lady Michelle found out about this conversation. Otis agrees that his daughter is a bit crazy and decides to change the subject. He says to send today's report and name Adrian as the main contributor. Meanwhile, outside the meeting room, Billiam asks to talk to Adrian privately. Archie gets into position, and the protagonist says that there is no problem. He realizes from the status that the deputy leader has no bad intention. Billiam is direct and says that he knows that the protagonist is hiding his strength. Many vassals are worried about the future of the territory, especially if the young master Cedric becomes the representative. There will certainly be a crisis. Billiam gives his opinion and says that Cedric does not have the qualifications to be the lord, so he is determined to support Adrian if he has any intention of competing with his brother. The other vassals also supported him with all their might. Adrian used the magic glasses to confirm that the deputy leader was being sincere. He assumes that Billiam is following some instruction from his father, because the two are friends. Or maybe he is acting this way because the protagonist was his savior. Either way, Adrian is not willing to take this conversation further. Then he says that he will pretend that he never heard this. The status of the deputy leader changed from happy to disappointed. The protagonist preferred to refuse this proposal now, because he knows that his life will change upside down if he steals Strix's position. In addition, there is no way to judge now who is on Anna's side collecting necessary information or not. So Adrian decided to go alone with Arcia. He wants to be the only one responsible for the defeat of Anna and Cedric. This victory is totally his, but the protagonist keeps in mind the people who are really concerned about the future of the territory. The deputy leader will certainly be in his future plans. Days later, the protagonist is awarded in front of all the soldiers and leaders of the special forces. He is being the biggest contributor during the battle, and for this he received the medal of the second-class Golden Lion. The person who delivered the medal was Kalitz Reinhardt, the 23rd king of Reinhardt. Adrian was applauded by all the important people of the territory. The nobility stood watching the awards. The truth is that the protagonist didn't want to draw so much attention, but the reports gave away that he was a genius. Adrian is sure he would be threatened if Cedric was here. The scene changes to the Lawrence Palace and Cedric shouts that useless is being praised. He believes that all the merits would be his if he were participating in that battle. The boy calms down and asks where his father is. Anna replies that he is with that incompetent woman, referring to the protagonist's mother. Cedric gets even more angry and asks if she didn't realize that her father is spending more time with Sylvia. Anna yells at her son not to raise his voice with her and says that he can't poison that woman either. She thinks that the Viscount is spending too much time with Sylvia because he promised the protagonist that he would take care of his mother while he was away, so she practically puts all the blame on Adrian. Anna tells her son that he doesn't have to worry because that boy isn't even your competitor. Soon after the battle is over, he leaves and everything will be in Cedric's hands. The boy takes a deep breath and agrees with his mother's words. After all, there is someone very powerful behind them, his maternal grandfather. In addition, most of Lawrence is under Anna's control. Cedric believes that his father, Rayford, is just a proxy who momentarily rules this land until he gives it to him. The guy can't wait to get his hands on all this. Since childhood, Cedric was annoyed by all the compliments his half-brother received. He hoped that all this would change after the protagonist was poisoned. For a while this worked, but now it seems that he was reborn as that genius he always was. This only makes things more annoying for Cedric. The scene changes to 48 days since the beginning of the battle. Adrian brings energy drink to the vanguard. The soldiers comment among themselves that they feel much more refreshed after drinking this. It is to be expected since the protagonist used the legendary elixir of medicine. Just one diluted drop is enough to make the vanguard invigorated. The soldiers return to patrol the area after drinking. The protagonist wishes him good luck. Suddenly, someone warns that the commander is waiting for him. Adrian feeds the black eagle that was named Crowy. Then he gets into the car towards Commander Otis and complains that the man has been calling him frequently to the office in recent days. Harmon says that means he's very trustworthy, but the protagonist isn't so sure. A few minutes later, he enters the meeting room and meets commanders of other units. The protagonist wonders what the high-ranking commanders of the division are doing here. He remembers that he sent Otis a message to pass on any information, but apparently the commander preferred to summon several people and now he doesn't know what to expect. At that moment, Otis catches everyone's attention. He warns loud and clear that the end of the battle will be announced soon. Adrian is visibly surprised. He received the information that the enemy aliens are meeting to retreat. It seems that Crozen's soldiers had no intention of participating in a duel in the first place. The commanders believe that they did it because they wanted to increase the ego of the Empire. Otis says that in relation to the enemy vanguard, apparently they will continue to force an attack as a battle game. This annoys the protagonist because in the end it is always the subordinates on the battlefield instead of the superiors. Otis approaches and says that he does not have to worry because he will receive more rewards for the contribution he made when the battle is over. Adrian agrees. When he returns home, he will finally decide his future. Sometime later, the deputy leader also received information about a possible withdrawal from the Empire. He says that this is very good. After all, if it were an all-out battle, many people would be annihilated from all sides. Adrian asks what he is doing there when he should be resting. The protagonist takes a cookie that Archie was eating and offers it to the deputy leader. The man accepts it and says that he is sure it is good, considering that it was given by Commander Otis. Billiam opens his heart and comments that he thinks Adrian is different from all the other young masters. He even stands guard in the center of the command while his men are resting. The protagonist mentally agrees with the man's lines, but he thinks that his attitude comes from his previous life, since there he was an ordinary person and was educated to treat everyone that way. The deputy leader says that he admires the security that the young master has. The protagonist replies that he is not that safe, but Billiam remembers watching him drink tea while the world was fighting. The soldiers managed to relax when they noticed his composure in the face of chaos. Adrian understands that these words are accompanied by a request for him to become the successor. He is about to refuse the proposal once again when suddenly the deputy leader kneels. Billiam says that he has reliable men at the same time. Around that no one can get close, the devices have also been checked so he doesn't have to worry. The protagonist takes a deep breath and says that he knows he has taken all the precautions, but this behavior can draw attention. The deputy leader replies that this is why he came here when everyone is resting. Then he speaks loudly that he wants to follow Adrian Lawrence and serve him. The knights outside also want to do the same. Adrian agrees and Billiam is surprised, but the protagonist says he has one condition: he must act normally until he receives the order to reveal. The deputy leader asks if it would not be better to gather all the forces as soon as possible. Adrian says that it is more important to follow his orders, then asks how many knights are willing to follow him. Billiam replies that there are 5 vanguards and 30 knights. The number will be at least doubled if he gathers the people of the territory. The protagonist thinks that for now he has no problem, and it will be good to work with these people. The deputy leader says that he has one more thing to say. Viscount Rayford was planning to assign Pesius to him, so it would be a good idea to recruit him in advance. Adrian is shocked. The Pesius Lord is the deputy commander of the Order of the Knights of Lawrence. With his superior skills, he had practically no rivals among all the Ara specialists, with the only exception being the commander of the Order of the Knights. The protagonist remembers that Pesius left the order after the conflicts he had with Anna, but that man is a typical and very popular warrior. In other words, it is enough to be on an equal footing with the forces of Anna and Cedric. In addition, the protagonist also thinks that he can use Pesius outside the royal family. He fully supports the idea and tells the deputy leader that he plans to meet the former deputy commander of the Order of the Knights as soon as possible. Secretly, of course. Billiam says that the young master can trust him because he will prepare this meeting in secret. Adrian is finally moving forward to build a strong alliance. He has even stopped being seen as an idiot by most of the knights of that headquarters. After the meeting with Billiam, the boy returned to focus on the Chronicle online game to form the 7th Circle. Unfortunately, this dream was short-lived, because he was eliminated in seconds by the boss of the 7th Tower. Arshia and Crowe also did not resist. The system said that he could try again when he regained the character's health. A few minutes ago, the protagonist entered the game willing to destroy the boss. Since he started playing Chronicle, he never experienced the feeling of having his character murdered, but he was sure that the pain would surpass anything he had ever felt in real life. The protagonist noticed Arshia taking the lead to protect him from the attack. Crowe also attacked, but the single movement of the boss's blade eliminated them both. Adrian was the last victim. That knight had an abnormal strength, a completely different level. After the protagonist was eliminated, the system sent him to the Resurrection Village. Adrian regained his senses and still felt a lot of pain. He soon used the Resurrection Scroll as support to summon the girl. Arshia lands on the ground and Adrian asks if she felt pain. The girl says that her senses in the game are much smaller than his, so it didn't hurt so much. Adrian breathes a sigh of relief hearing this. He feels guilty for using a female body as a shield. Maybe he should change the combat style so as not to make the girl go through this again. Fighting that night showed that they need a quick change. Arshia usually blocks the enemy's movements and the eagle blocks the vision. Meanwhile, the protagonist does a lot of damage with magic. This style of combat was not enough to beat the knight. Maybe it is necessary to decrease the long attack time. This means that the eagle must attack together with them. Arshia's defense is great against that knight, so she can continue in her position. At the moment, Adrian only thinks of 3 solutions. The first is to use Circle's smaller magicians so you can do more sequences of attacks. The second solution is to use the Black Eagle as a warrior instead of support. The third is to make Arshia stop using shield and start using the sword to deal damage. The protagonist decides to use the second and third option. The girl supports him and they try again to defeat the boss, but they are eliminated again. The protagonist is reborn in the Resurrection Village and starts screaming that this is impossible. Arshia is also resurrected and apologizes. Adrian says that it is not her fault. This time he tried to use both supports actively in the fight, but the eagle was eliminated in 1 minute of fighting. He was eliminated in 3 minutes and Arshia in 4 minutes. Adrian wonders where he went wrong this time. The Black Eagle didn't do much damage to the target, but the distraction helped. Maybe her participation is essential. If used in another way, the protagonist thinks a little and suddenly has an idea. Then he says it's time to try again. A few minutes later, everyone is eliminated again. This time they were not so bad and managed to last longer in the battle. Thanks to this, he was able to see the knight's fighting pattern. Adrian tells himself that just try again now that he knows the fighting pattern. The fifth attempt begins. The knight laughs at his opponents and encourages them to change classes. Adrian smiles and asks if he has ever heard about bombs. The next moment, the protagonist attacks with magic bombs. Arsha and Crowy help, but a few seconds after the girl is eliminated, Crowy also falls. The protagonist is the last. The group doesn't give up and tries for the 9th time. The boy has tried all the formations he knew. Even though casting magic while dodging attacks was a problem, he still managed to hold out for 25 minutes. Thinking about it, the protagonist decided to use the items focused on reflexes. Some eliminations happened during the journey, but Adrian kept reviving and attacking. He tried to be more evasive and cast several spells. In the end, he was eliminated. This time the protagonist gives a happy smile even though he failed. The knight memorized his damage and set it aside, allowing the other members to attack. This resulted in 62 minutes of fighting, and the boss received 84% damage. Adrian understands that he cannot give up. After the last failure, the system expelled him from the game. It turns out that the boy exceeded the allowed time. The protagonist takes a deep breath and does some stretches with his arms. He says that he feels that the world is moving more slowly. Girl replies that this feeling is because he has been eliminated several times. Over time, he will get used to it. Adrian asked if she was feeling anything different. Arsha looks at her hands and replies that she feels her body is stronger. The protagonist looks delighted at the girl. He is amazed that her answers are nothing like artificial creations. Soon the girl will be acting 100% like a human. The protagonist soon warns them that they better rest and get back to the game when they wake up. A few hours later, the system notifies that there were 17 failures. Adrian tries to eliminate the boss for the 18th time. This time the knight is fatally hit. The system notifies the victory. The protagonist celebrates with jumps and screams of happiness. He completed level 7 of the Lucky Encounter mission. After that, Adrian was teleported to the 8th floor of Archduke Lucas Tower. He is impressed by the size of the room. It is the size of a real library, and most of these decorations are not made with game graphics. Adrian was distracted by the new floor when he thought everything was too good. So he certainly thought there could be more enemies. Arsha smiles and says that the master does not need to worry. The protagonist didn't even know that she could smile like that. Suddenly, a hologram begins to materialize in front of them. Adrian realizes from the silhouette that he is a goblin and assumes that it is a new support. The hologram materializes and the protagonist screams, asking if he is the Archduke. The little one introduces himself as Chester. He is the manager of Destiny and also a fragment of Lucas. Adrian is open-mouthed. Chester says that he is an NPC created by replicating Lord Lucas' memories. Adrian understands that Chester works like a clone, so it is likely that he does not help him. Chester says that he does not need to be apprehensive. The protagonist replies that the little one does not look like an NPC. In fact, he seems to choose his own actions. Chester replies that this is obvious. After all, he was created with someone's living memories. Adrian says he understood. Even if Archduke Lucas has passed away, he will continue to live in this space thanks to his creations. Chester says that the boy can understand it that way, but none of it is eternal. Chester says that his job is not to live forever as an NPC, but to live in the mind of the next generations. Archduke Lucas thought that even if a cloned memory had a consciousness, it was not his true self. So he created a virtual space like this. Lucas would create a homunculus like Arsha and record his memories there if he really wanted to be eternal. The protagonist had not thought about it. In fact, he imagined that at the end of the tower, Lucas was going to steal his body to try to revive. But he is relieved to know that it is all in his head. Adrian is sincere and tells the little one that the top floor was very difficult. He thought he would not make it. Chester shakes his staff and the system warns that Adrian can use the authority of administrator of the Hollywood system 5 times. Chester says that this ability would already be given to the boy at some point. The protagonist asks what he can do with it. He is told that he will be able to exercise administrator authority over all programs based on the Hollywood system, which is a virtual reality system. Adrian is surprised. The Hollywood system with virtual reality features is similar to Internet Earth. In other words, it means that the protagonist can control all the information posted online. Chester soon warns that he must abide by the rules about the administrator's authority. First of all, the authority cannot be used in Chronicle, because it is the world of Archduke Lucas. Adrian is also forbidden to directly access the brains of other users. In addition, he cannot harm anyone in that place, even if it is indirectly. The protagonist says that these rules make sense. After all, Lucas was not sure if the administrator's authority would fall into the hands of a good person. The first thing Adrian tries to do with his authority is to launder the money acquired through fate. Chester recommends creating false investment records. The protagonist questions if it is not dangerous for someone to search the documents. The little one replies that the probability is low if he manipulates the market as a whole. From the past, present and future reports, the protagonist is happy and says that he will use the first permission for this. He also asks Chester to make a record Arcia, as if she had come from Everhill and was orphaned after losing her parents. The protagonist is treating Chester as if he were the genie in the lamp. He questions why did Lucas create this for someone he didn't even know. Chester replies that Lucas did it because he didn't want the life of the one who met destiny to be as difficult as his. The protagonist has a sense of comfort with these words. Maybe if he didn't know the story of an inhabitant of the earth with so many legacies, probably his life would be pathetic. Adrian feels that he has gained a purpose since he heard about Lucas, so he kneels down and thanks his master. Chester turns his back and says that he is not Archduke Lucas, but he gives a corner smile that gives away that he is happy to find someone like Adrian. The system finally delivers the rewards of completing the previous floor, in addition to money. The protagonist also formed the seventh circle. The scene changes to the city Nishan. Pecius receives news of the protagonist's contributions. Billiam says he believes that Adrian's leadership in controlling the territory will develop even more than it is now. He questions whether Pecius did not intend to support Adrian anyway. Pecius says that he does not support a child. Immature, he only came to talk to the deputy leader because he thought it was an important matter. It is a fact that the boy excelled in the battle, but he doesn't think he deserves his trust. Billiam laughs and says that the two are really similar. Probably Pecius believed the rumors about the young master. It turns out that he is not that person of the rumors. The deputy leader says that he was able to witness Adrian's genius with his own eyes. After all, he was the one who was on the front line listening to the protagonist's command. He even dares to say that Adrian is the greatest genius of this era. Maybe Pecius doesn't understand this now. But the boy managed to win over even supporters who were on Cedric's side. Pecius says that the deputy leader seems to be devoted to this boy. He says that if what Billiam said is true, then that rumor about Adrian having become useless after poison is a lie. He just wore a mask to protect himself. It's a very smart attitude. He asks what Billiam intends to do. The deputy leader replies that he wants to persuade the vassals who maintain neutrality and the balance of power towards the second young master. Pecius says that it is a somewhat complicated task, but he is looking forward to it. Billiam shouts that he made a great choice. Pecius replies that he has not yet decided to support the boy. Before anything, he wants to meet this genius. The deputy leader says that he will call Adrian now. At first, Pecius did not believe that the protagonist was someone so incredible, but after this conversation he feels that finally after 10 years he has the chance to rematch against Anna. Billiam tries to talk to Adrian and even hits the communication clock. He is embarrassed that the protagonist does not answer. Pecius looks carefully when suddenly a light bursts into the air. It was a very soft mana. The men realize that something like this only belongs to someone from the seventh circle. They wonder who could have something like that. Suddenly the protagonist teleports with Arcia to the men's room. He soon warns that they are surrounded. But no one understands what he is talking about. Adrian assumes that the bandits used artifacts to hide their presence. At that moment, Adrian screams to attack. Arcia eliminates 5 assassins in a matter of seconds. The protagonist scolds Pecius and Billiam. Both seem powerful, but were surrounded by bandits. The deputy leader did not understand how this happened. Adrian says that he spent 13 years preparing for this moment, so he wouldn't let anyone interrupt his plans. Pecius realizes that he judged the second young master wrong. Now he needs to worry about being useful to this child. The person standing in front of him is totally different from what he imagined. On the other hand, the protagonist took the opportunity to check Pesso's skills. The commander has a lot of talent, and his emotion is positive. He asks if it was Anna who sent these people. The protagonist confirms and then cleans the bodies using repair magic. Billiam and Pecius are impressed that the bandits have disappeared. The protagonist says that it is better to talk elsewhere. A 5th-class magic surrounds the men and they are teleported. A few years ago, an incredible magic teacher appeared. A nation with 4 empires were devoted to this person. His name was Kine Riverdale, a great successful teacher, teaching several wizards to reach the 7th circle. The greatest wizard in history was Archduke Lucas without a doubt, but the greatest teacher was Kine Riverdale. The protagonist lied to men saying that he learned everything about magic from this teacher. Pecius found it suspicious because Kine Riverdale has already passed away. Adrian says he learned everything a few years before this happened. Pecius still didn't understand how it was possible, because he always heard the servants say that the boy spent the day focused on games. At that moment, Adrian says that the commander is right. It turns out that Professor Kine's teachings took place in the virtual world and in the real world. It even displays the system's interface. Certainly everything the protagonist told. Convincing men was a lie. He couldn't just say that his statistics in real life increase, because he enters the world created by Archduke Lucas. No one would believe his words. So he basically said that he attended Professor Kine's classes virtually. The protagonist even created a fake hologram with an image of him and Professor Kin together. Men believe the lie. That montage was created by Chester, in addition to receipts and fake books that the protagonist claimed he got from the professor. The writing seemed true. The protagonist believes that even Kind's followers and students would believe him if he saw this. Adrian knows that he would be more exalted if he said that he found the fate of Archduke Lucas, but he is sure that his life would turn into hell. Being an apprentice of Professor Kind Riverdale seems more comfortable. The protagonist then warns Perseus that he doesn't have to worry about Cedric and Anna because Arsha will take care of it. Perseus is surprised because he thought his task would be extremely this. Adrian says he has another plan for him and asks the man to extend his hand. Perseus obeys, and the protagonist brings the clock closer. At the same moment, a transfer of 20 billion is made to Perseus. Adrian explains that the commander must create a group under his command to gather information. The truth is that he plans to ask this group to do dirty work to achieve his plans. But he doesn't know how to ask something like this to a knight like Perseus. The commander reveals that it is a lot of money, but the protagonist replies that it is enough. In addition, his savings are much greater than that. After the conversation, the protagonist gets up and says that he wants to take Cedric from his place as heir, then asks if Perseus intends to help him. The commander bows and promises his loyalty to the young master. Meanwhile, at Lawrence Palace, Anna receives the news that her 5 assassins have disappeared without a trace. She asks if the captain of security had not said that those men could beat anyone, unless it was a master of the aura or a great wizard. The captain is about to agree when a glass of wine flies on his head. Anna yells angrily, asking what went wrong. She regains her calm and asks if they were able to locate Perseus and Billiam. The man replies that Billiam has returned to his unit. Perseus' location remains unknown. Anna says that this means that Perseus is alive. The deputy leader would call Rayford if something had happened. Anna is angry because the meeting between Billiam and Perseus can only mean that they are plotting something against her. In addition, her husband gave the order to stop watching Sylvia and Adrian. The woman feels that she is losing control. Adrian was praised and managed to win over Billiam. This is not good for her and for Cedric. Anna is sure that if the two commanders join the side of that illegitimate, they will become unstoppable. She says that she needs to make sure that Cedric has no competitors, then suggests murdering Adrian. The captain looks incredulous and she asks if he is afraid. Anna believes that this is the only right way. The guard tries to say that this will drive Viscount Lawrence away. In addition, the young master is very famous. Anna interrupts him. She goes to the bottle of wine and says that the guard has worked with her long enough to know that he should not answer. Anna pours the wine on the man's head and says that there is no other way, so he must not disobey. The guard tells himself that he screwed up. He just didn't want Adrian to have an end so soon, but he has no choice but to follow Anna's orders, so he apologizes to her. Suddenly, Anna says she will blame him for Adrian's murder. The man is incredulous, but the woman says that this is the way he has to show his loyalty to her. The guard replies that he will prove his loyalty. Anna begins to leave the room. She demands that this time he ensure that the killers who fail are eliminated. The man stands alone in the office and tells himself that he has thrown his life away by trying to thwart this woman. The only chance to stay alive is for Cedric to inherit the Lawrence family. The scene changes for Adrian and the commanders. They celebrate the victory of the 23rd Division. Now the end of the battle has been officially announced and everyone can finally rest. Otis says that he has gained more recognition thanks to the brigade of the young Lawrence. The protagonist thanks for the compliments. Other young masters say that thanks to the battle they secured possession of the throne. Everyone was given credit in this battle. The protagonist thinks that it wouldn't have happened if he had kept all the rewards, but thanks everyone for their support and is called humble. Otis tells Adrian that his actions have been recognized and he is sure that he can become the Lord. Adrian doesn't think so. There is a big difference between inheriting a title and earning a title alone. It doesn't matter how high a rank you get in this battle, because you don't have a county yet and you can't pass on your title. But it's okay because Adrian didn't fight hoping to win that. Otis says it's a shame that the young master with so much potential doesn't have an environment to express himself. Adrian is sure that this will change when he becomes the legitimate heir of the Lawrence family and removes Cedric. Otis proposes that the boy join his family, so he will get a territory to command. Adrian is embarrassed by the idea while Otis says he has a daughter. The protagonist tries to change the subject and says he will think about it. Otis replies that he will welcome him with open arms. But the protagonist heard that the commander's daughter was a lunatic, so he definitely doesn't want to marry her. But it's good to know that he has that support. It's not long before Cedric and Anna are removed from the family. The day after the end of the battle between the Reinhardt Kingdom and the Kryzen Kingdom, the main army returned to the base. Adrian says goodbye to the soldiers and commanders. He is invited to return whenever he wants and thanks him. Later that day, he enters the game and rests after eliminating one more beast. Adrian enters the game whenever he has free time. His goal is to get strong quickly. Currently, his level is at 202. But the level requirement to challenge the Lucky Encounter mission is 250. The protagonist feels that he is not advancing. The monsters also get stronger as your team gets stronger, so it's impossible to level up more than one level a day like before. It's self-explanatory because the new bosses need at least 5 team members to eliminate them. Adrian thinks he'll have to recruit more members to the group, but soon changes his mind because it might look suspicious if it shows up with someone else. At that moment, Adrian calls Arcia, but she doesn't answer. Crow starts making noise to get her attention. The protagonist realizes that there is something strange and quickly leaves the game as soon as he returns to real life. He realizes that his room has turned into a battlefield with Arcia trying to hold the invader. Adrian immediately uses the 5th class shield to protect them. The assassins flee. Arcia reports that these invaders were the same as those who surrounded the commanders, but this time they used aura swords and other aura weapons. The protagonist understands that they are vanguards attacking. Arcia says that Billiam was late, but is dealing at this moment with the assassins. At first, Adrian thought it was okay because Billiam is also a vanguard. However, Arcia says that it won't be easy like that. Suddenly, the protagonist notices some armored golems. He laughs as he says that Anna has surpassed herself this time, then hands an aura sword to Arcia and asks if it's enough. She answers yes, and the protagonist also prepares the staff. Spider monsters begin to approach. But the next moment, Adrian strikes and an explosion erupted from his artifact. The monsters are sent out of the floating train. The protagonist eliminates the weakest and tells Arca that they need to catch the others. On the other hand, the captain of the enemy vanguard realizes that there is no way to continue. They lost a lot of time and did not complete the plan. Suddenly, an explosion engulfs the enemy vanguard. The captain realizes who is responsible and screams, asking how the Lawrence family has such a demon. While Adrian attacks the monsters, Arcia cuts the enemy's teleportation power. The captain orders to finish off the girl, otherwise they won't be able to escape. The captain didn't think there was an aura master and an archmage in that place. The man simply decides to flee and abandon the rest of the vanguard, but Adrian freezes the man in place. Arcia cuts off the enemy's arm and the protagonist yells for her to wait. The blade stops the captain's face centimeters. The man looks back, realizing that his army has been annihilated. Adrian warns him that he has nowhere to escape. Suddenly, the captain spits out a purple liquid and falls to the ground unconscious. Arcia checks the vital signs and says that the man has passed away. It looks like he chewed poison. Adrian confesses that he thought this only happened in soap operas. He underestimated the loyalty of these men. Billiam's vanguard asks how the young master did it. The deputy leader replies that Adrian was a disciple of Kind Riverdale. The vanguard is surprised because he thought that the boy only knew how to stay locked in his room playing any game. Billiam replies that Adrian's teachings were conducted between reality and virtual reality. The theory is available online. The vanguard is impressed. Billiam adds that it is possible for Adrian to surpass Professor Kind. After all, he was able to fool everyone by saying that he lost his genius after Venom, but he was actually hiding his true power. The protagonist is shocked by those words. He realizes that Billiam's power of influence is really high. A few hours later, Adrian finally returns home. Sylvia runs crying to receive her son. She checks if any piece is missing and Adrian asks his mother to calm down. Viscount Rayford congratulates his son for the good performance and he thanks him. Initially, the protagonist thought he was going to have a great reception, but he prefers it to be calm like that. Probably Anna and Cedric avoided any celebration because they thought he would not survive that attack. Rayford says that he prepared a great banquet for the arrival of his son. Adrian looks happily at his artifacts. Everyone is invited to participate in the banquet. The soldiers thank Adrian for his command and say that it was all thanks to him. Rayford says that his son seems to have won people's hearts. At that moment, Cedric and Anna arrive at the banquet. The protagonist pretends that nothing happened and says that he hasn't seen them for 3 months. Anna says it's true and welcomes her. Adrian realizes that his stepmother is not so happy, but the expression of the man behind her was what caught his attention. That is the guard Morris. Even though he was in charge of the murder of the protagonist, he is relieved that Adrian survived. The protagonist realizes this when he looks at the status of Morris. He thinks that maybe it would be useful to bring the guard to his side. Someone else catches Adrian's attention. Commander Crone is at the center of Anna and Cedric's forces. Adrian is surprised to realize that Crone's trait is authority-based management instead of combat skill. At that moment, Cedric says that the boy did a great job. He thought it would be interesting to praise his brother in front of everyone. On the other hand, the protagonist just wanted to put an end to these useless two. But first he needs to act as if nothing had happened. Even so, Adrian decides that this time he won't let Anna and Cedric act with him the way they want. So the protagonist replies to his brother who doesn't care about his compliments. Everyone is surprised. It is at that moment that Adrian decides to create a justification to condemn these two damned. For this, he first leaves the atmosphere tense and draws everyone's attention. The protagonist says that his brother probably would not have survived. If he went to battle in his place, he would not be able to create tactics and would be eliminated in the first confrontation. Cedric is clearly annoyed. Adrian says that must be why his vassals are starting to abandon him. Cedric begins to curse him, but the protagonist says that this anger comes from his maternal side. At that moment, the noise of breaking glass is heard. The butler ended up tripping and knocking over the glasses in the middle of that chaotic atmosphere. Anna grits her teeth after hearing the way the protagonist is treating her son. Adrian asks if she has anything to say. Suddenly, Cedric starts laughing and pulls the short sword from its scabbard. He accuses his brother of a lack of humility after a single confrontation in battle, then suggests a duel to see who is the best. Sylvia's worried, and the Viscount says that Cedric should not start a commotion in such a happy moment that is the return of his brother. The protagonist asks his father to be silent and just observe. Cedric says that his brother has always obeyed him, but now seems to have become a rebel. He accuses Billiam of making poor Adrian's head. The deputy leader looks at the protagonist without understanding why he was mentioned in the family discussion. Anna asks if Billiam is really using poor Adrian to destroy the Lawrence family. Cedric orders the deputy leader to be captured, but nothing happens and an awkward silence spreads around the place. The soldiers say that if Cedric wants to do something like that, must do it with his own hands. Cedric realizes that he has no support and is embarrassed. He decides to act for himself and attacks the protagonist with the short sword. People are worried, but Arsha acts quickly, holding Cedric's arm with his left hand while eating a piece of meat with his right hand. The guy tries to let go, but realizes that she is very strong. He calls her an easy woman. Arsha hits him in the face with the piece of meat. Then everyone is incredulous at the girl's attitude towards the young master. Cedric falls to the ground, passed out. Some whispers are heard saying that that giant guy ended up being knocked down by a turkey leg. Cedric begins to regain consciousness and hears people talking about him. At that moment, Commander Crone pulls his sword and says that the second young master has crossed the line, but the protagonist replies that it is the commander who is crossing the limits by pulling a sharp item for him. Cedric shouts that these damned dared to hurt the future lord, so everyone deserves to be murdered. Commander Crone agrees with him, but says he can't do that to the second young master. Cedric gets angry. Crone turns his attention to Arsha and says that she can be murdered. After all, she is nothing more than a commoner lover. Arsha continues with her carefree meal. The commander raises his sword, while asking if she really thought she could act like a noblewoman, just because she is a lover of one. At that moment, all the soldiers and viscounts raise their swords towards Crone. Billiam is advised to retreat, but he demands that the commander move away from Lady Arsha. Crone realizes that many of the soldiers next to the protagonist were part of Cedric's organization. It seems that they changed sides. It's strange because these soldiers put loyalty above all else. Suddenly, several knights join Cedric. The protagonist realizes that this is why Anna was calm all the time. She was waiting for the reinforcements. Cedric shouts that there is no point in repenting now. Billiam will also be arrested and punished along with everyone else. The protagonist shouts that his father is on his side and asks how the knights dare to stand against the Lord. He realizes with curiosity that the people in Cedric's organization are more armed. In addition, their equipment is overwhelmingly better. At that moment, a voice asks why Billiam is acting this way and forgot what his position is. Crone threatens to finish off the deputy leader in front of everyone. The Viscount yells at his son to use the artifact and run away as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Sylvia cries worried about her son. Anna and Cedric are happy with the situation. Crone gives the command to attack. Adrian is faced with what he has always dreamed of. He shouts for the soldiers to protect Viscount Rayford from these rebels. The other side worries about being called rebel traitors. The protagonist reaffirms that they are traitors because the Viscount is on his side, and even so they plan to attack. Adrian removes the illusion magic he put on Arcia, and the girl appears with her armor. He then warns that he will take care of the three and leave the rest to her. The girl agrees. Seconds later, a swift attack makes the enemies' heads fly. Anna and Cedric are scared in the middle of the confrontation. Adrian says that a traitor like Crone needs discipline, so he swings the handle of his sword in the man's face. Crone realizes with concern that Arsha's attack was lethal and concludes that she is a master of aura. So the man yells at the knights to attack while it should be enough. Adrian says that it is impressive that the man can give instructions to his subordinates in the midst of all this. It is expected of a commander of knights. Too bad this won't change anything. The protagonist maximizes all stats. The commander recognizes that light involving the young master. Usually wizards can use magus classes below their level without having to cast. This means that Adrian, who is in the 7th circle, can use 5th circle magic without having to cast. There is an ability that allows wizards to eliminate the vanguard. At that moment, the protagonist uses the ability to memorize, then sends the explosion of flames and Crone is hit. The commander falls to the ground. Then Adrian turns his attention to Cedric and Anna, saying that he will have fun. Suddenly, Crone jumps from the flames that hit his body and pulls the sword towards the protagonist, but he falls to the ground after the young master dodges. Crone is eliminated in the aftermath. Cedric and Anna are horrified. They do not believe that Adrian returned from battle as an archmage. A few hours later, the scene changes to the Margrave Palace. Anna's father finds out what the protagonist did and screams that he will finish him off. Raven sees all the scenes of the fight. It seems that a video was posted on the internet showing everything that happened on the arrival of the young master. Raven sees the scared faces of her grandson and daughter. He yells at subordinates that this video is spreading too fast. Maybe tomorrow most people will know about the situation. Some comments on the video are already highlighted. People think Raven supported Anna and Cedric's betrayal with the Viscount. The man replies that he doesn't care about virtual comments. He is informed that some nobles support these comments, but he doesn't care and promises to punish anyone who aligns with Adrian. Raven Magrave has military popper equal to a duke and a marquis. It would be problematic if someone with the same title of marquis took Adrian's side. Raven thinks this is highly unlikely. The subordinate says that this video can reach the king and he intervenes. Anna's father realizes that the man is right. A young archmage and an aura master will get people's attention, but Raven has an idea to turn these two into imposters. He intends to say that that video was artificially created. It won't be difficult to make people believe. The subordinate says that someone can try to authenticate the veracity, but Raven keeps his idea. He wants to finish off the protagonist and justify that he did it, because the young master started the battle. After all, accusing a marquis of combining strategy to destroy him is a crime. So he asks what forces can be mobilized now. The subordinate replies that 200 vanguards and a flying fortress. Raven says that it is enough to stop a brat who is testing his strength. He's excited to deal with it. Meanwhile, the protagonist is happy with the repercussion that his video had. He knows that the next target is Raven Maygrave. The man will probably take his daughter's pain. That's why Adrian is fortifying his own alliances. At that moment, he receives a very importantly, the girl displays a big smile on her face. That is Olivia Riverdale, the daughter of the famous Professor Kine Riverdale. Olivia Riverdale is an archmage belonging to the Kingdom of Moons. Rumors say that she is close to reaching the 8th circle. The girl reached the 7th circle only at the age of 22. The protagonist is happy to get a date with her. At that moment, Olivia checks the platinum plate that Adrian said he received from Kine Riverdale. She says that it looks real and her subordinates agree. For a moment, the protagonist thinks he managed to deceive her. Who made the certificate was Chester. Suddenly, Olivia says that she is not saying that the platinum plate is real. Anyone can fake it. Adrian is surprised, and the next moment he feels pressure invade his glass. Olivia and her subordinates check if the protagonist really holds the 7th circle. Adrian catches his breath and asks why she is doing this. The girl says that it is amazing and the subordinates applaud the protagonist. Olivia replies that she was only testing her skills. She recreates a cup that was broken while saying that she just wanted to find out her exact level. Adrian asks if he has earned his recognition. Olivia replies that she still has some doubts, but does not intend to refuse the help of a genius archmage who claims to be his father's disciple and is helping his family expand their influence. Adrian thinks this way of thinking is sensible and asks what would happen if he was a villain who made his family suffer losses. Olivia replies that it is impossible for someone in their right mind to want to be an enemy of their family. The protagonist finally finds the opportunity to make a request. The next day arrives. Raven is informed that the troops will arrive in an hour. The man complains about the delay because he wanted it to be faster. Suddenly, a subordinate runs up to him and says that another video has been posted. A projection shows Olivia welcoming her father's disciple. She announces that Adrian has become a 7th level archmage at the age of 20. The Riverdale family decided to help him reach the 8th circle. Raven gets annoyed watching the video. He feels that the protagonist is always one step ahead, as if he is reading his thoughts. After the Riverdale family shows support for Adrian, it is a matter of time for the royal family to support as well. At that moment, Olivia ends the live broadcast saying that if anyone tries to harm Adrian, the Riverdale family will understand it as an attack on them too. Raven breaks the transmission device. The subordinates thought he was going to back down, but Raven says she will go ahead as planned. The knights are worried about the intervention of the royal family, but Anna's father says that so far the king has not spoken. Then there is nothing to fear. The knight repeats that it is better to retreat because the Riverdale family is supporting the second young master. Raven yells that they will attack anyway, so they need to speed up and take that illegitimate commoner by surprise. He orders the knights to mobilize the troops immediately. At that moment, Crowy flies above the men, sharing the vision with Adrian. The protagonist realizes that Raven will not back down. He remembers about the request he made to Olivia. The girl easily agreed to hold a press conference, but she found it suspicious that Adrian did not want to be seen as a disciple of his father. Even so, Olivia introduced him as Kine's apprentice. At that moment, the protagonist puts his memories aside and tells Arshia that they need to go. He decides to just count on Arshia to reciprocate the rematch. The protagonist perfectly read the actions of his enemy, and in the end won the support of the Riverdale family. Now he feels prepared to hunt his prey. After the last fight, Cedric and Anna were arrested for rebelling against Adrian, but after 2 days they escaped from the prison with the help of the Knights of Raven. The police realize that the prisoners have escaped and start the search. While Anna and Cedric try to escape from the pavilion, the woman takes an artifact in her hand and says that they cannot live like this. The son asks if she is sure she will do it. The mother replies that she has no choice and tells him to hurry. They quickly reach the top of the castle. The ship that Anna intends to flee is already waiting for him. A teleportation light surrounds them. The group is sent inside the fortress. Anna says that she will ensure Adrian's defeat. The woman inserts the key into the flying fortress and introduces herself as Anna Lawrence. The ship identifies the user and starts moving. Anna orders the subordinate to prepare the cannon and aim at the Viscount's castle. She is about to destroy everything when suddenly the protagonist appears behind her and covers her mouth. Adrian looks at his stepmother and thanks her for unlocking the security of the flying fortress. She acted exactly as he expected. Anna is incredulous at the unexpected appearance of the young master and asks how he got here. At that moment, the subordinates are knocked down. Arsha takes care of the knights while Adrian asks if Anna is not afraid of them finding out that she planned to shoot the Viscount. It is a very big crime. Besides that Raven's troops are already arriving, then he wishes good luck to Anna and Cedric, since they will protect the Lawrence castle from the attack. Adrian knocks the woman to the ground and goes towards the control of the fortress. Anna begins to tremble as she says that there was a mistake. Maybe they will make up if they talk a little. The protagonist asks Archie to release Cedric and go to him. The girl obeys and Cedric begs for his brother's mercy. Adrian raises his arm and traps the two in a shield. Meanwhile, the knights beg for mercy. Adrian replies that he will send the soldiers back to Marquis Raven. For a moment the men are happy, but the next second they are expelled from the air fortress. Adrian turns his attention to Arsha and asks her to edit the video. He intends to show the world the new attack Anna was planning to do. Sometime later, the video is posted and the community sees Anna saying that she is going to murder the Viscount with a firestorm. The comments accuse the woman of being a lunatic and say that Raven must be involved too. The Marquis follows the public's opinion and says that he wants to eliminate all the commoners who are commenting on this. The subordinate says that the man can even do that, but the site on which the video was posted belongs to the jurisdiction of the Elysia Union, and they do not reveal personal information of the users. Unless it is a serious crime, Raven gets angry. At that moment, the fortress with 200 vanguards arrives. He warns the captain that they must not fail, then gives the order to start the battle. The mages use teleportation magic, and the fortress disappears. Raven wonders if she should have gone with them. Meanwhile, Anna sees the new fortress coming and begs them not to approach. The protagonist fled the fortress and sat with Arcia in the free area of the castle. He realizes that the time has come and says it's time to use the mana wave. Cedric yells for his brother to forgive him and get him out of here, but Adrian drinks the wine without worry and says that he learned this attack during the battle. It is called sacrifice. Cedric and Anna scream for help. The protagonist says goodbye. At that moment, an explosion happens between the fortresses. Adrian asks Arcia if she wants to make a request for the explosion of fireworks. Arcia joins him. The protagonist finally manages to put an end to Anna and Cedric, those who made their childhood a living hell and tried to eliminate several times over the years. The explosion of the fortresses lights up the sky. Adrian says he has now won his freedom. The scene changes to a few minutes later. Raven is anxious because he hasn't received any news from the Vanguard so far. He notes that too much time has passed and the operation should have come to an end by now. The assembled knights hear the boss's murmurs. Raven believes that there was a miscommunication. He questions if the spies have already reported. The subordinate warns them that they haven't yet, but assumes that they were arrested when they helped Anna and Cedric escape. Raven asks if he's joking, but the subordinate assumes that Adrian already knew that this was going to happen and prepared himself. The Marquis says that it is impossible for him to be in the hands of that brat. Raven adds that she does not understand the delay of her men in reporting the current situation. At that moment, someone invades the room and says that an article from the Lawrence family was posted 3 minutes ago. In the video, it is possible to see vanguards of Lawrence territory clashing with the fortress. After the collision and explosion happened, the subordinate adds that the Lawrence family posted an evacuation notice an hour ago, and all the residents of the county evacuated. In the article, it says that while communication was completely cut off, a large explosion suddenly happened in the sky. Raven says that the protagonist must have sacrificed his own team to create the false feeling that it was an accident. Suddenly, the Marquis is consumed by rage and hits his fist on the table, dividing it into 2 parts. The subordinates watch in silence. Raven asks how many troops can act now. The knight replies that 65 vanguards, or 25 vanguards in 1 fortress. If this number is exceeded, they can be convicted of breaking the law. Raven believes that there is no way Lawrence's old vanguard has surpassed itself. In addition, the mana blast that Adrian released must not have been enough to cause damage to his vanguard, but it shows that the boy is watching his steps. Anyway, now Lawrence no longer has any air fortresses for the boy to blow up. At that moment, Raven is informed that the royal family has posted a statement. They scold any family that tries to hurt Adrian. Raven starts laughing uncontrollably. The subordinates realize that the man is not well. The Marquis admits that he underestimated that illegitimate. He spent all the money he had on money for equipment and the vanguard, but in the end, he was stopped by Adrian. The man takes a deep breath and asks if the Lawrence family's communication signal has been restored. The knight confirms and he says he should immediately call Adrian. The scene changes to the Black Eagle flying over a location. Unlike Arcia that was created to reproduce the actions of a human, the Eagle was created to be a 100% support. Its attack is from close range and its only ability is shared vision. The protagonist was using Crowey's vision when he received Raven's call. The Marquis says that the protagonist should not think that he will be so lucky next time. Adrian replies that he will only rest when he is done with the Magare family. He then reveals that he left Cedric and Anna inside the fortress that was destroyed. Raven calls him an illegitimate and useless commoner. He also says that he will not forget this humiliation and will repay everything that happened. The protagonist realizes that the man didn't even pay much attention to the death of his daughter and grandson. Maybe it's because the two were seen as tools by the Marquis. Adrian decides to act and asks if he is on the 80th floor of the castle. In a few seconds, a gift will arrive for him. The Black Eagle begins to approach the building. Meanwhile, the protagonist asks if Raven has heard of memorization magic. It is a magical ability to take away the spellcasting time. Perhaps a 7th circle mage is enough to break the Marquis' defensive barrier. At that moment, Raven and the subordinates see the Black Eagle approaching the castle. Behind the beast, there are 10 7th level magic circles.